Hola mi amigos, ¿cómo está? On this week's video, we are still in isolation, as should you be if you're not. Get inside and watch some videos. There's some right here. We're going to be talking about a rather requested video series. We're going to be talking about the Rec films from Spain. Should be obvious why. We'll talk about the title. And we're going to find out whether or not this series and its American counterparts have any, como se dice en español, continuity. So, back in 2007, Record was released in Spain, and yes, the actual title of the movie is Record, which Rec is an abbreviation for. I'm just gonna call it Rec because it's shorter and easier. It's just Rec. It shows Angela here, the host of a news show called While You're Sleeping, as she covers a fire station. They get called out to an apartment building where an old woman snaps and chows down on a police officer, and the building has been blocked off by the public health department, locking them inside. Things escalate and they shoot the old lady, but the building is completely sealed off. We get a view of a calendar that lets us know that it's November, and another that lets us know that it's 2006, so that's our official year here. A health inspector comes in as all hell breaks loose, and we find out that they're tracing an infection that began with a dog from the building, which is why it's closed off. Everything erupts, and the old lady's not as dead as she seemed, so bullets don't necessarily work, and very shortly, pretty much all of the residents have been infected. Only Angela, Pablo the cameraman, and Manu the fireman remain, but he's quickly turned as well, so our survivors must take refuge in a penthouse. In there, they discover information about a Portuguese girl named Tristana, who may have been demonically possessed, and the apartment belongs to a member of the Vatican who was charged with treating her medically, although her condition became contagious and mutates rapidly. Then... Oh God. What is that? Oh, what is that? I guess that's Tristana. Ugh. And she kills Pablo and then drags Angela off into the darkness. So, of course, after its huge success, there had to be an American version because, we don't do subtitles. And that appeared just 1 year later in 2008 under the name Quarantine. I wonder why everyone wanted me to do these movies right now. This one actually gives us our date on the film's poster, stating that the events occur on March 11th, 2008. Angela is still Angela, although Pablo is now Scott, although Angela could have a lumberjack brother somewhere. Oh god, don't even get me started on a lumberjack. Do people even remember how disappointing the ending of Dexter was now that Game of Thrones has happened? The fireman includes a Suicide Squad member and TV Jonah Hex, and the plot very closely follows that of the original. And when I say closely, I mean it's the same movie but with American actors like the guy from Ally McBeal. There are a few differences, like the doc being a vet, and because of that he recognizes the infection as a mutated form of rabies. There's a few other small differences, with the CDC actually shooting one of the residents trying to escape, and then when they get to the attic we have our biggest change as all of the religious paraphernalia and Vatican references are gone, and the virus is just a chemical weapon stolen by a doomsday cult instead. It ends in the same way, but with a very skinny man instead, played by Abe Sapien, and gives us the same final shot, a shot I should point out that they used for the damn poster of the movie. Spain didn't waste any time either, since the film's huge success guaranteed a sequel, and we got one in 2009 with Rec 2 from the same team as the first, and takes place on the same night as the first, so we're still set in November of 2006. Our camera source this time is a team of soldiers who are inside the building assisting with the quarantine, and we finally meet the father of the little girl from the first one, a character talked about but not seen. They enter to see the aftermath, but the infected are nowhere to be seen, but don't worry, they show up with a vengeance. And then we take a turn with Dr. Owen here as he holds one of them off with a rosary. He's revealed to actually be from the Vatican itself, and the people aren't infected, they're possessed by demons. It's a turn, and I'm on board for it. They need to retrieve a vial of blood from Tristana in order to create an antidote, and they locate little Jennifer, and she talks in the voice of the demon. We take a sidebar as we follow a group of teenagers that sneak into the building with the dad but end up trapped, and make a creative use of a firework. Surprisingly, Angela shows up alive, and they interrogate a possessed teen to find out where Tristana is, and things get a little more supernatural as we discover that you can only see the door in the infrared light. Our gangly girl shows up and Angela kills her, but then she snaps and kills the others as it's revealed that the demon that was in Tristana is now in her. 2 years later, we bounce back to the US for Quarantine 2 Terminal in 2011, which introduces us to a plane load of people. Ralph here gets bitten by a rat, and Henry here watches a news program that's live, and it's the events at the apartment building, so we're still set in March of '08 here, on the same night. Ralph goes full infected, and I should point out now that this is the first entry in either series to not be in found footage format. When they land the plane, they soon find themselves locked out of the terminal. Not sure how the CDC responded so quick to block this off. The plane made an emergency landing and was rerouted. They even make a point to say that they're not at the right gate, so I'm not sure how the CDC got to the airport and put up the blockade at the right gate. These infected die a lot easier than before, and bullets seem to work, but the virus seems to be able to allow a handicapped man to walk. We find out that it's not the CDC, but the Department of Homeland Security outside, and it's mentioned that there were no survivors in the apartment building, so it looks like the American Angela didn't make it. Henry turns out to be a member of the Doomsday cult that unleashed the virus, but he has an antidote, although it doesn't work, and instead mutates him into some sort of rat human thing, I guess? Unfortunately, he bites Jenny, and little George is the only one left, except we see an infected cat on its way to Las Vegas. The saga continued back in Spain in 2012 with Rec 3 Genesis, a switch up for the series as you'll soon find out. We're at the wedding of Clara and Coldo, and one of the guests is a veterinarian who was bitten by a dog earlier, so I think you can see where this is going. This is most likely the vet mentioned in the first film, and the dog was probably little Jennifer's, so the doc is gonna be infected. I mean, it wouldn't be a movie if he wasn't. So if this is true, that places this movie in 2006 as well, although everyone is dressed for warm weather, and although it's not quite cold winters in Spain, so this isn't really a problem. Everything pops off and the infection spreads really, really fast this time around, and wait, what? There's a title card. And now it's not found footage anymore, shifting to a narrative format for the first time in the Spanish series. Oddly enough, the infected folks are a lot slower here, staggering around like Romero zombies. They can't enter a church, and Clara reveals via intercom that she's pregnant, while the demons show up as Tristana in reflections. The priest discovers that prayer freezes the demons in place, while a news broadcast shows us the events of the first two films happening, showing us for sure that we're still in '06. Oddly enough, contrary to the last Rec film, a simple gunshot takes out these creatures, and Clara basically becomes ash, while the priest uses the PA system to freeze all of the infected by reciting Bible passages. Unfortunately, Clara's grandfather is deaf and apparently really, really sneaky since there was no one around him a second ago, and he bites her, so they cut off her arm because she's becoming ash. The area is actually shut off and Claire's infected anyway, so they share one last kiss before being gunned down. The series' grand finale occurred 2 years later in 2014 with Rec 4 Apocalypse, which picks up after the ending of the second film, with soldiers sent into the apartment building, and we're continuing on in the traditional filming sense and not the found footage format. We get a return of some of the possessed characters from the first film, including Manu, and they rescue Angela, so again, we're still set on that same night in '06 here. She has no memory of what happened and is now on a boat along with the soldiers from the intro and a wedding guest from the third film. Unfortunately, there's also an infected monkey on board, and it starts some chaos, and it just seems like it jumped in from a different film series or something. And the food gets infected, so we're off and running. We get a pretty big time glitch as this computer program gives us the date as October 2nd, 2014, a full 8 years after the first film is set. Now, it's pretty impossible that this one is actually set 8 years later, and it's such a tiny thing that we're just going to ignore it. Just say that the date is off on this guy's program. I mean, I guess we could say that all of it takes place in 2014, and that calendar in the first one is an old calendar as well, but it's displayed so prominently where this is not, so I'm going to favor that instead. They discover that the parasite is in Angela, so they try to extract it, but it had earlier switched over to Guzman, with the ship about to self-destruct, and very few people left. They harpoon Goozy and escape as everything explodes, and that damn parasite thing survives though, but it is eaten by a big fish, so I don't know if that would kill it, or if it's just an infected fish now. Angela and Nick survive, making this the very first film in either series to end in an upbeat manner. So there you have it. It's 6 movies, 2 different series that I think actually have a pretty strong continuity, with the exception of one minor date glitch. They hold up pretty well. The Spanish series takes place over the course of a couple of days, and then the American movies take place over 1 or 2 days, and it holds up pretty well. I think the continuity works, and these are all pretty enjoyable movies. The Spanish series are all fun. The first 2 are fantastic. They are great movies, and part 3 and 4 are fun and watchable. They're not as high caliber as I think that the first ones were, but I really enjoyed watching both of them. The American films, the first one, if you haven't seen the Spanish version, is actually pretty great. I mean, it's the same movie, just basically with American actors and dialogue, and it works pretty well. They did it pretty well. But if you had just watched the Spanish version, it feels kind of useless, but it is done really well. The second Quarantine movie is not terrible, but again, it's not great. Out of all of these, that's probably the one that I think that you could skip if you wanted to skip any of them. But I enjoyed watching these. None of these were that bad. But that's about it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're enjoying all the extra content that we're putting out for this bizarre time in our history. This is a really weird time, and hope we're getting through it soon. By the time this video gets released, we're going to be a couple weeks in. I'm shooting it about 1 week in. Hopefully that this will pass in the near future, and there won't be a lot of tragedy from it. But I hope all of you guys are well. I hope you're all holding up in this bizarre circumstance, and I hope everybody feels okay and that everybody's doing okay. If you're not, let me know down in the comments. You know, we got a little community happening here, so just speak your mind. Also, like, subscribe, do all that typical stuff. Share the video out to the world. Let other people have something to watch in this time as well too. And check out my patrons over here. These guys are helping to keeping the channel going. I mean, I don't have a job at the moment, so this is what I'm doing. I hope you're enjoying it. So I'll see you shortly, guys, for another great video. Thanks a lot. Bye.